Hello, welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepardson at BChad50. Talking about tonight's action. 7 games on this Monday night, and one of your top pitchers, I should say. Clayton Kershaw, $12,100. Gotta love him in most spots. The Cubs strike out a ton, but then you look at the wind. Gusty, blowing out to center up to 17 miles an hour right now. 9-run total. Kind of scares me a little bit playing him in cash, but at the same time, if you're not making contact with the ball, really doesn't matter how windy it is because that ball's not going anywhere anyway.
Yeah, and that 9 total, it's important to note the team by team over under total. Pinnacle has those up now. The Dodgers check in with a team total of 5. The Cubbies check in at 3.5. So I'm still going to be playing some Kershaw. I might actually split my cash games action 50-50 though. Normally on a Kershaw slate, it's a 100% Clayton Kershaw, but I'm going to get some Pineda in there at $2,000 cheaper. He's by far the biggest betting favorite on the night, pushing nearly minus 300 on the money line.
You swap with Kershaw. That's usually Kershaw's role.
Yeah, facing the worst lineup in baseball against right-handed pitching. And Pineda coming off of a really sharp start, so I do like that. I mean, I try not to let recency bias get in the way with guys, but it is nice to see Pineda coming off of a good start because he has been a little bit up and down. But when he's locked and he gets a soft lineup tonight in the Phillies, gotta like the $2,000 savings. Probably going to split my cash games action 50-50 between the two. Don't have a problem getting either in GPPs, but on a slate where there's no Coors, there's no Miller Park, there's no... There's a number of offensive ballparks that we don't get to play at. Usually you say it's pay up for pitching because they're going to get low totals, but take a look at those totals. There are a number of totals 8 and above, and it's wind, man. It's wreaking havoc. We're in Cleveland, the wind's blowing out. In Chicago, the wind's blowing out. You got a Yankee Stadium game. You got Joe Bland taking the hill, which means that you get a BP pitcher out there. So you got some lineups to grab some hitters from. So there is some merit in maybe spinning down to some of these cheaper names. And one guy that I like in GPPs a little bit, not a great FIP, not a great XFIP, but he's pounding the strike zone. He's missing some bats, and he's facing a lineup that is basically boom or bust. And that's Hector Santiago against the Astros. Very right-handed dominant. They certainly could get to Hector Santiago. They make for a decent stack. So, I mean, let's just put it this way. He's obviously not a cash games play. There is some danger in using him, but when the Astros aren't going right, they're punching out at about a 25% clip. He's capable of piling up some strikeouts, and if the fly ball's staying in the yard, then Santiago is a decent bet to go 7 innings, get you maybe a strikeout an inning, and easily deliver on a $7,500 price tag. And he's at home, not at Minute Maid Park, so he is in a home run suppressing ballpark. So I do like Santiago and a handful of GPPs, and there's a cheap name that you like, so why don't you go ahead and share him?
Yeah, I'm going to throw out Tommy Malone, $6,500. Past 2 starts at Texas versus St. Louis went 14 innings, just 8 hits allowed, 13 Ks, 1 walk. Got a win in one of the 2 starts. So, I mean, he's not a guy that you're necessarily anticipating is going to go 7 innings most times. But this is a White Sox team that's the worst in the league against left-handed pitching, and it is not even close. So, anytime there's a lefty facing them, you mentioned earlier it was with Jeff Locke last week, mowed these guys down. So, you don't need to be a great left-handed pitcher against these guys. You just need to have a left arm that throws the baseball, and you're in play for me in GBPs against the White Sox.
Yeah, definitely, and he is a notable betting favorite, and the Minnesota Twins offense has a number of lefty bashers that can get to John Danks and get him some run support. So I do like Malone a lot if you want to spend up on some of these bigger bats and favorable situations. Malone looks like a pretty nifty play to me.
Absolutely, and with that, we're going to move over here to catcher, where there's one cheap guy that you and I both love. He mashes left-handed pitching. He's going to be in all my cash game lineups and a lot of my GBPs as well. Yan Gomes, $2,300, near minimum salary, got that big pop, wind blowing out in Cleveland, gets Kyle Ryan, a lot of things going in his favor tonight.
Yeah, it's safe to say any Clayton Kershaw roster I build is going to also have Yan Gomes on it. You need that salary relief. He's an easy means of it that gives you well above average offensive production. So you can go ahead and hook the two of them together in any of your lineups. Probably also going to be popular on my Pineda teams because another five-figure pitcher, you're going to have to get some salary relief. Catcher's a great place to do it when you get a guy like Gomes. On some of these teams where I'm building with Malone and Santiago, I will pay up for Brian McCann at home. Absolutely does work at Yankee Stadium. I mean, he's a power hitter that takes advantage of his venue. So $3,500, not too much to pay against a really bad righty in Carlos and Kevin Correa. And a guy that you brought up, I won't be pairing him on my Hector Santiago teams, but on my Tommy Malone teams, no problem going to Evan Gattis. Hits left-handed pitching pretty hard. Can really put a charge into a baseball in any ballpark. And another guy that I know you like and I like, Victor Martinez at Cleveland. As long as they don't give him a day of rest. I mean, he came back from the disabled list, so it is important that you check the lineup. Make sure that Brad Ausmus isn't, babying him. But if Victor Martinez is in the lineup, gotta like the wind blowing out. That total actually moved up with the news of the wind blowing out. Initially started off, the team total for the Tigers was 3.5, I believe, first thing this morning, up to 4 now. So definitely expected to be some fireworks there in Cleveland.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, $3,000 for him. We know he's one of the best hitters in the game when he's healthy. So getting a discount on him while you can is something I'm definitely trying to take advantage of right now. Outside of that, really no catchers I'm reaching for. If it's cheap, it's Yan Gomes. If it's paid up, it's one of the guys that we just mentioned there. First base, big fan of Mark Teixeira, $3,500 tonight at home. Obviously, switch hitter, got a ton of power, gets Kevin Correa. Going to be one of my favorite plays there because these expensive guys, yes, Miguel Cabrera's in a fine spot, but 5,100 is pretty prohibitive tonight. Rizzo gets a lefty-lefty with Clayton Kershaw is going to be tough. Obviously, you can consider Albert Pujols. He's been absolutely on fire. Gets a lefty and Brett Oberholzer as well. 4,300, more of a tournament option, but I think I like Mark Teixeira quite a bit tonight, though.
Yeah, I like Teixeira. I like $3,400 Jose Abreu quite a bit as well. If you're not using Tommy Malone, Jose Abreu is a good guy to pick on him with. I know his numbers against lefties are down this year, but don't be fooled. Batted ball profile looks really good, and really it's just a case of bad BABIP luck at this point. Nothing standing out as real concern for him against lefties. If you want a GPP play that could be very under the radar, $3,600 Chris Carter, going to be more expensive than a couple of other more high-profile players. Doesn't have that typical favorable lineup spot, but he's a guy that, I mean, he can reach the seats, and you like these big power hitters. He gets a lefty. He does his best work against left-handed pitching. He's not at home, so he's going to be a little bit off the radar because he's not at Minute Maid Park, but Chris Carter's a guy that can send the ball out of any ballpark, so I do like him as a GPP one-off or maybe a couple bullets with him because if he does go deep, he's going to be super low-owned. And speaking of guys that can go deep, Ryan Howard, Yankee Stadium, really good left-handed batter, park factor for home runs. Pineda, yes, we like him today. Yes, he's the biggest betting favorite. All the more reason to suspect that Howard's going to be low owned, and all the more reason to grab him on a couple of your GPP teams where you don't have Pineda.
Yeah, absolutely with you there. Left-handed power, great in that ballpark. And I'll throw out a cheap guy, Logan Morrison, $2,300. Should have a fine lineup spot once again. So that's another guy that I'm looking at. Second base. It's Brian Dozier against a lefty, and a bad one at that, in John Danks. So you're obviously looking at Brian Dozier wherever you can. I'll get him in my cash game lineup, however, by whatever means necessary tonight. And you got to love him in tournaments as well, along with his teammate that we'll get to at third base. But he's my top play there. And then there's a guy not too far below him. Well, kind of below him in price, but not very below him in the spots.
Howie Kendrick, $1,000 cheaper, absolutely wrecks left-handed pitching. Gets Wada. Wada struggles a bit with right-handed batters. Wind blowing out at Wrigley Field. Gotta like him. Typically hits in a very favorable lineup spot, hitting third or fourth around Adrian Gonzalez. I know Donnie Baseball's been juggling that lineup a little bit. So see where Howie Kendrick hits tonight. Justin Turner's been getting favorable lineup spots, and we know Jock Peterson moved to second, Puig up to first. So let's just make sure that he's not doing anything outrageous. But as long as Kendrick's hitting in a top 5 lineup spot, love him. If he hits 6th or so, don't like him quite as much, but still under $3,000 against a lefty with favorable wind conditions, gotta like it. $2,600 Johnny Giavotella might fly below the radar. He's moved up and hit leadoff a bit lately here. Gets a lefty in Brett Oberholzer, not a good one at that. So I don't mind him at $2,600. Probably going to be low owned because a lot of people just look at Johnny Giavotella's name and go, who? But has done work in the minor leagues. Finally doing okay at the big league level. Certainly not lighting the world on fire. But if he's going to hit leadoff again, anybody that's hitting in front of Mike Trout, and Albert Pujols gets a little bit of consideration from me. And then $2,300, Robinson Cano has reached base in 4 games straight. Not exactly, we're looking for small victories these days, but 4 positive scoring outputs, and he gets one of the worst pitchers on the slate tonight, Joe Blanton. Joe Blanton is terrible. Don't be fooled by his first start. This is still the guy that really probably doesn't belong in the big leagues at this point. So grab some left-handed Mariners bats, grab some right-handed Mariners bats, grab anybody that can stand in a batter's box, whether they're holding a bat or not, against Joe Blanton today. Yeah, so I like Cano at 2,300, especially if you're going to be using Kershaw.
All right, and one more cheap guy, Chase Utley, another lefty at a Yankee Stadium. He's min salary if you need to save some money there. Third base, we already mentioned Justin Turner. You mentioned him kind of in passing. He should have a nice lineup spot, 3,200. He's in a fine spot as well tonight. Kyle Seager as well, $3,100. He's got himself that same nice matchup that we were just gushing about a second ago against Joe Blanton. He's obviously in a good spot. And then I know there's a guy, Trevor Plouffe. I'll go with Trevor Plouffe first. Lefty. Great to pair him with Brian Dozier, one of my favorite things to do in cash games, one of my favorite duos. And I know there's a guy you like in GPPs because you think he'll be really low owned. So where are you going with that one?
Actually, I'm assuming we're talking about Chase Headley. I'm a big fan of $2,500 Chase Headley. I could also be Oh, I'm sorry. I know exactly who you're talking about now. I do like Chase Headley, so let me finish that line of thinking. I didn't expect him to be low owned, which threw me a curve, but $2,500 hitting right behind Gardy gets Kevin Correa, who's one of the worst pitchers on the slate. So gotta like Headley in cash games if you're using Kershaw or Pineda. Also got to like him a little bit in GPPs because that Yankees lineup has a nice team over-under total. But the player you were alluding to and slipped through the cracks even for me at this point, this is a contrarian pick, and always the contrarian pick when you pick anyone against Clayton Kershaw. But Chris Bryant, $3,700. Wind is blowing out, and we've already seen Kershaw give up a home run to a rookie slugger at the hot corner this year, and if you haven't seen the gif of Clayton Kershaw freaking out after Joey Gallo went deep, I would suggest looking that up. It's entertaining if nothing else. But Chris Bryant, big raw power, and I love Kershaw, don't get me wrong, but if he makes a mistake, Chris Bryant can hit it a long way, and a wind-aided homer counts the same as a wind-aided home run. So I do like Chris Bryant a little bit in GPPs tonight. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm with you there. And same with Chase Headley. I think he's going to be a great cash game play tonight as well. Outside of that, really nothing I'm looking at third base. How about you?
Me either. We touched on all the names that I'm going to be rostering.
Yeah, absolutely. Shortstop is not pretty tonight. You could pay for Carlos Correa. You were talking about he can steal bases, hit home runs. The guy can kind of do it all. Jose Reyes, similar, not so much the home run power, but certainly the on-base percentage, the stolen bases, the runs, things like that. But looks like tonight's the night to go cheap. So give me a couple of your cheap guys you're looking at here.
Yeah, tonight's a punty kind of night at shortstop. Check lineup cards, see who's hitting where. If somebody gets a surprise assignment and, the leadoff spot or 2-hole or top 5 in the lineup, they immediately jump towards the top of the list if they're priced cheaply. But I like Eric Ibar, $2,400 against the lefty. He's a switch hitter that actually hits lefties a little better than righties. Oberholzer, not exactly an imposing left-handed pitcher, so I like him at $2,400, hitting 6. He has hit leadoff at times this year. There's always that possibility. Maybe they go back to him at leadoff and drop Giovitella. So keep an eye on the Angels lineup. But even if he's hitting 6, $2,400 is a decent price point for him. And then $2,200 min salary Francisco Lindor. If he's going to continue to hit second, I like him against Kyle Ryan. Good matchup with a rookie pitcher, and hitting second in an Indians lineup that, yes, they're better against righties than lefties, but Kyle Ryan, a rookie, I do think that there is some on-base and maybe run-scored potential for Lindor.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a guy that he's going to bust out sooner rather than later. Guy's got a ton of talent, one of the better prospects coming up, so got to like that, especially that lineup spot like you mentioned. So moving to the outfield, Brett Gardner's price really getting up there, but he's a guy who's really hot right now. You're really going to want to get some Brett Gardner in your life tonight.
Yeah, he is, his price point, it makes him fantastic for GPPs because at $4,200, I think you're going to see some people spin off of him elsewhere. But in GPPs, that stolen base plus power upside plus great matchup. Yankees expected to score a lot of runs. Obviously, their leadoff hitter should have a big hand in that. So I do like him as a very high ceiling play. My favorite play in GPPs and cash games alike price point considered, Yasiel Puig, $3,700 against Wada. Good power, has the speed, and has moved to the leadoff spot. Gonna get a lefty. Gonna be playing in that wind blowing out Wrigley Field, which we know the offensive fireworks can happen in a big way when that's the case. $3,700, good price point. Can afford him even with Kershaw with some of these cheap punt plays. So really like Puig a lot. Also like Nelson Cruz at $3,300. No, he doesn't get a lefty, but it doesn't matter what hand Joe Blanton throws with. It's not going to be blowing Nelson Cruz away tonight. So really like Nelson Cruz at just $100 cheaper and the same price point as Mr. 3 home run game from yesterday. Scott Van Slyke might be 1% owned tonight. He gets a lefty. You want Scott Van Slyke in your GPP lineups. I don't care that he might lose that last at-bat in favor of pinch hitter or a defensive replacement when the Cubs go to the bullpen and there's no longer a lefty on the hill. Van Slyke might need only 2 at-bats to reach the seats once against Wada. So I like him at 3,200. It's going to be low owned. Going to give you some edge if he does reach the seats. And then just one more name that I'm going to throw out there on the cheap. I was looking at, I'm drawing a name blank right now. Oh, I'm sorry. $2,200 Ryan Rayburn is who I'm looking at. Good lineup spot. Oh, typically hits 4th or 5th for the Indians when they do face a lefty. Again, wind blowing out at Cleveland. Cleveland is the favorite tonight. 4.5 team run over-under total. Expected to score some runs tonight, so I do want some Ryan Rayburn exposure for sure.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Ton of power in that park with the wind blowing out, like you said. Going to be a great spot for him, and it even seems like he hasn't really been getting platooned out late either. He's been staying in the game, so you got to like that about him, especially at min salary. Going to be a popular play tonight, but for good reason. All right, that's going to wrap things up for us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.